The gavel and the gadfly. The courtroom vibrated with nervous energy, a hive disrupted. Journalists crammed the press gallery, their cameras aimed like weapons at the empty seat of the accused, a motley assortment of spectators, a blend of the merely curious and the darkly fascinated, strained for a view, muttering conjectures about the man about to enter this legal crucible. The air, thick with the scent of aged timber, stale coffee, and a prickling undercurrent of dread, felt almost palpable from his elevated perch. Judge Reginald Thompson surveyed the scene, his face a carefully constructed mask of impartiality. The ebony gavel, a solid, gleaming weight, sat poised on its stand like a hibernating beast. He adjusted his glasses, the lenses flashing under the stark fluorescent lights. Thompson commanded respect, not through height. He was of average build, but through sheer presence, shoulders squared, jaw set, his eyes, magnified by thick lenses, possessed an unsettling focus, renowned for his incisive mind, his even more cutting wit, and a known antipathy toward celebrity defendants. He viewed their fame as obfuscation, their wealth as armor, and considered it his duty to breach both with the unyielding edge of the law. He sighed inwardly. Another spectacle, another case blown out of proportion by the media's endless hunger for scandal. This particular one, involving an alleged libel stemming from a single tweet, seemed remarkably insubstantial. Yet, however frivolous, this was his domain, and he would enforce order. That he cleared his throat, the sound amplified and echoing, instantly silencing the simmering buzz of conversation. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. Judge Thompson settled back in his high-backed leather chair, a portrait of judicial power, and he waited for the scraping of chairs to cease before speaking. "Be seated," he directed, his voice almost toneless. Bordering on ennui, he sifted through the documents before him, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. This Musk fellow. The initial filings, the man appeared to believe he could simply purchase absolution. Thompson intended to disabuse him of that notion. He derived a certain grim satisfaction from deflating the egos of the rich and mighty, a form of civic duty. Perhaps he glanced at the clock above the entrance point 9 sharp, precisely on schedule. Promptness, Thompson considered, was a virtue woefully absent in contemporary society, particularly amongst the so-called elite, just as he was about to voice a pointed observation about the defendant's potential tardiness. A disturbance flared near the doorway. A cascade of camera flashes momentarily blinded him. The murmuring swelled into a roar, punctuated by the shouted inquiries of reporters. Thompson's brow furrowed, his annoyance unmistakable. "What is the meaning of this disruption?" he demanded, his voice slicing through the cacophony. The bailiff hurried towards the commotion, attempting to regain control. The defendant, "Mr. Musk, has arrived, Your Honor," he announced, his tone a blend of reverence and exasperation. Thompson leaned back, his expression inscrutable. "Very well. Let him enter," he stated, a biting sarcasm coloring his words. "We wouldn't want to delay the man who thinks he's going to rescue humanity from its own follies." The crowd parted, revealing Elon Musk. Yet this was not the self-assured, magnetic figure Thompson had observed on television. This Musk appeared discomposed. His dark hair was disheveled, as if he'd repeatedly raked his fingers through it. His suit, typically impeccably tailored, was creased, and his tie hung askew. That he clutched a briefcase that looked worn and far too full. Most surprisingly, he seemed agitated. His eyes flicked around the room, and he shifted his weight nervously. That it was an unusual display of discomfort from a man famed for his boldness and unshakable confidence. That Thompson's eyebrow arched, his interest ignited. This was unexpected. He'd anticipated arrogance, defiance, perhaps even a degree of theatrics. But this was something quite different, he observed as Musk navigated towards the defendant's table, his progress hampered by the swarm of journalists relentlessly peppering him with questions. "Mr. Musk, do you stand by your initial statements? Mr. Musk, are you worried by the possible penalties? Mr. Musk, do you believe this case is a waste of judicial resources?" Musk ignored them, His gaze locked on the table. He dropped his briefcase onto the surface with a resonant thud. IT sounded heavier than its appearance suggested. He ran a hand through his hair once more, further exacerbating the mess. Thompson watched him with a curious blend of amusement and contempt. S.O. The mighty Elon Musk, reduced to a bundle of nerves by a simple claim of defamation. It seemed even the titans of industry possessed their weak points. Mr. Musk, Thompson's voice resonated through the courtroom. I suggest you take your seat and regain your composure. This is a court of law, not a public spectacle. Musk looked up, startled. His eyes met Thompson's, and for a brief instant, Thompson detected a flicker of something within them. Not precisely fear, but more akin to resignation, or perhaps determination that he couldn't quite decipher it. Musk nodded sharply and sat down, adjusting his tie with a clear effort. He opened his briefcase and began rummaging through its contents, extracting piles of documents, notebooks, and what appeared to be a half-consumed energy bar. Thompson shook his head. The man was in complete disarray. He glanced at the plaintiff's table, where a team of polished lawyers sat, their faces radiating assurance. They resembled sharks circling weakened prey, but he couldn't fault them. Mr. Musk, Thompson reiterated, his voice sharper now. Is counsel present? Musk looked up, his expression blank. Counsel, he repeated, as if the term were foreign to him. Yes, Mr. Musk, Thompson said, his patience fraying at the edges. A lawyer, an attorney. Someone to represent you in these proceedings. Musk hesitated, then shook his head. No, he said softly. I'm representing myself. A unified gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. The plaintiff's lawyers exchanged looks, their smiles widening incrementally. Thompson stared at Musk, disbelief etched on his face. You're representing yourself? He echoed, his voice dripping with derision. Do you possess any legal training, Mr. Musk? Any experience in a courtroom setting? Musk shifted uncomfortably, his gaze lowered. No, Your Honor, he confessed, but I've read a lot of books on law. Thompson chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. Reading about law, Mr. Musk, is not synonymous with practicing law. This is a complicated matter. You'll be facing seasoned attorneys who know the intricacies of the legal system. That you'll be at a distinct disadvantage. Musk looked up, his eyes meeting Thompson's once more. This time, the determination was clear. I understand, Your Honor, he said, his voice resolute. But I believe I can manage. Thompson leaned back, studying Musk intently. He couldn't quite categorize the man. Was it arrogance? Foolishness? Or something else entirely? He'd witnessed countless defendants attempt to act as their own attorney, usually with disastrous results. But there was something about Musk, some quality that suggested he wasn't quite as unprepared as he appeared. He sighed. This promised to be interesting. Very well. Mr. Musk, Thompson said, his voice tinged with challenge. If you insist on self-representation, I will permit it. However, I must emphasize that I will hold you to the same standards as any licensed attorney appearing before this court. I will not condone any unprofessional behavior, any frivolous arguments, or any attempts to delay the proceedings. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Musk responded, nodding. Good, Thompson said, the gavel feeling heavy in his hand. Then let us commence. He looked out at the assembled crowd, a spark of anticipation in his eyes. This case, he suspected, was about to become far more intricate than initially anticipated. He brought the gavel down with a resounding crash. The court is now in session. Reed versus Musk, the accusation. The courtroom pressed in, a stuffy box where the air seemed to cling. Judge Thompson felt a sheen of discomfort despite the air conditioning as Evelyn Reed took the oath. She seemed to fold in on herself, a wilting flower under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her knuckles were white as she gripped her hands together, and the hurried attempt to mask the exhaustion under her eyes was painfully obvious even from the bench. Asterisk, interesting asterisk. Thompson mused. Asterisk, a fragile vessel, easily broken, or a Pandora's box of secrets. Asterisk. Across the room, Mr. Abernathy, her counsel, advanced. His tailored suit spoke of quiet victories, and his voice, polished like fine steel, cut through the quiet expectancy. Ms. Reed, for the record, Would you please state your full name and occupation? Evelyn Margaret Reed, that I am currently between positions. The words were nearly lost, rescued only by the sensitive microphones. Abernathy proceeded smoothly, documenting her tenure at Tesla, her role as a senior marketing analyst. With each response, a palpable unease settled over Ms. Reed. Thompson watched with growing curiosity. He had anticipated a fierce denouncer, a woman blazing with indignation. Instead, he observed a small bird on the verge of bolting. Ms. Reed. Abernathy's voice softened, adopting a more considerate timbre. Could you detail the circumstances surrounding your departure from Tesla? Reed paused, her gaze flitting towards Musk, who sat at the defense table. An island of composure. He appeared engrossed in a notebook, seemingly indifferent to the proceedings. I was let go, she managed, the word tasting like ash. The official reason was restructuring. Did you accept that explanation at the time? Abernathy inquired, a thread of doubt woven into his tone. Reed swallowed hard, the movement visible in her throat. No, I believe my termination was a direct result of my raising concerns about potentially misleading marketing campaigns. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Thompson's gavel cracked down. Order. Such displays will not be tolerated. He refocused his gaze on Reed. Ms. Reed, you allege misleading marketing campaigns. Please elaborate. Reed began her testimony. She spoke of inflated range projections for Tesla's vehicles, amplified claims concerning autopilot's capabilities, of an environment where spin trumped veracity. As the words flowed, a glint of resolve surfaced in her eyes, a spark of defiance beneath her apprehensive facade. Her narrative unfolded through meticulously chosen examples, each brushstroke painting a picture of corporate misconduct and compromised ethics. Abernathy punctuated her account with strategically deployed documents, emails, internal memos, constructing an airtight case, brick by brick. S. Reed testified, snippets from the past flashed before her eyes. The gleaming, open-plan office at Tesla, once a beacon of her ambitions, now a stark reminder of shattered dreams. The interminable meetings, where marketing strategies were dissected and refined, where the relentless pursuit of innovation often obscured the pursuit of honesty. The creeping disquiet as she witnessed the manipulation of data, the cherry-picking of facts, the unspoken pressure to conform. She recalled the first email she'd sent, a tentative query to her supervisor questioning a particular claim in an upcoming advert. The reply was swift and dismissive. Team player. The words echoed in her memory, a silken threat masquerading as encouragement. The pressure intensified. She felt increasingly alone, torn between integrity and career advancement. The burden of her silence grew heavier with each passing day. Back in the present, Abernathy shifted his attention to the employment contract Reed had signed. He presented a copy to the court, drawing attention to specific passages. Ms. Reed, would you please read aloud Clause 7, subsection B? Reed cleared her throat, the sound magnified by the quiet. Employee agrees to maintain the confidentiality of all proprietary information related to Tesla Incorporated, including but not limited to trade secrets, marketing strategies, and internal communications. Any disclosure of such information, whether during or after employment, will constitute a material breach of this agreement. Abernathy transitioned seamlessly to Clause 12 concerning defamation. And now, Ms. Reed, Clause 12, subsection A. Employee agrees not to engage in any conduct, whether through written or verbal communication, that could reasonably be interpreted as disparaging or damaging to the reputation of Tesla Incorporated, its products, or its employees. Abernathy addressed the judge. Your Honor, we submit that Ms. Reed's termination was a retaliatory act, stemming directly from her conscientious objections to ethical violations within Tesla. Furthermore, we contend that Mr. Musk, through a series of defamatory pronouncements on social media, deliberately undermined Ms. Reed's professional standing and future opportunities, breaching both the explicit terms and the implicit understanding of her employment contract. He presented printouts of Musk's tweets, each a veiled jab directed at an anonymous, disgruntled ex-employee peddling false and scurrilous rumors. Though Musk had never named Reed directly, Abernathy asserted that the surrounding context and timing left no doubt as to the target of his venom. Thompson scrutinized the tweets, a furrow deepening on his brow. They were undeniably barbed. Verging on incendiary, he cast a glance toward Musk, who remained unmoved, his focus lost on some distant point beyond the courtroom walls. Abernathy concluded his opening remarks with practiced theatrics. "We are confident that the evidence will reveal Ms. Reed's unjust dismissal, her unwarranted besmirchment, and the enduring harm inflicted upon her career. Do we seek fair recompense for the injustices she has endured?" A renewed excitement crackled through the room. The accusations had been laid bare, the gauntlet thrown. Judge Thompson, his initial detachment momentarily forgotten, felt a genuine surge of curiosity. This was evolving into more than a simple celebrity lawsuit. This was a clash of wills, a battle for authenticity in a reality increasingly shaped by fabrication. His eyes lingered on Elon Musk, still silent, still an enigma. The game had begun. Contempt of court, almost. Elon shifted, the slick leather of the witness chair a cold contrast to his sweating palms. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker, but a stale, papery scent mingled with the heavy weight of anticipation. Pinning him down, he tugged at his tie. A nervous tick amplified since Evelyn Reed's testimony. Abernathy's portrayal had been venomous, casting Tesla as a den of vipers with Musk himself as their king. Judge Thompson, enthroned above the fray, scanned the room with weary indifference, his gaze lingering on Musk with pointed calculation that a dry rasp escaped his throat. "Mr. Musk," he announced, his voice possessing a sharp, almost theatrical precision, "are you prepared to mount your defense?" Musk gave a jerky nod, his limbs feeling leaden. Sleep had been elusive, haunted by Reed's face, etched with what he interpreted as betrayal. The morning had been a frantic scramble through notes, desperately trying to distill a complex tangle of data into a digestible argument. Now, under Thompson's assessing eyes, clarity seemed impossible. "Yes, Your Honor," he managed, his voice a hollow echo. "We intend to prove Ms. Reed's dismissal stemmed purely from performance deficiencies, and that her defamation claims are baseless." Thompson arched a skeptical brow, his gaze unwavering. "Only its performance issues, you say?" The words hung in the air, dripping with disdain. A suppressed chuckle rippled through the gallery. Musk swallowed hard. He'd envisioned launching with a meticulous breakdown of Reed's sales figures, highlighting her consistent failures to meet targets. The judge's derisive tone, however, had shaken his resolve. "Well, Your Honor, we've documented several instances of insubordination and detrimental effect on team spirit." He felt a cold rivulet trace a path down his temple. He sounded like a schoolboy caught red-handed. Thompson steepled his fingers, fixing Musk with an intense, almost predatory stare. "Insubordination and morale? Mr. Musk, you're defending against charges of slander and unlawful termination. Surely, you have more substantial evidence than playground squabbles to present to this court." The laughter swelled, louder and less restrained. Musk felt his face burning. He could practically see the headlines. "Musk's defense implodes. Tesla so grilled in court. Is the empire about to fall?" He risked a peek at the press section. Pens flew across notebooks, faces illuminated with undisguised glee. "Your Honor," Charles Olson, Musk's lead counsel, smoothly intervened, his voice a calm counterpoint to the rising tide of ridicule. "We possess a comprehensive range of evidence to substantiate our arguments, including internal correspondence, performance evaluations, and expert testimony, that we plan to present this evidence in a structured and coherent manner." Thompson waved a dismissive hand. "Doubtless, Mr. Olson, but thus far, Mr. Musk's attempts at representing himself have been unconvincing. Perhaps it would be more prudent to entrust the legal intricacies to the professionals." He returned his gaze to Musk, a flicker of amusement dancing in his eyes. "Unless, of course, you are about to unveil a sudden stroke of legal genius for our benefit." The courtroom erupted. A wave of anger surged through Musk, a scalding tide. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to retort, to say something, anything, to erase the smug satisfaction from Thompson's face. But he knew that would be a fatal error. Composure was his only weapon. "No, Your Honor," he said, barely audible. "I defer to Mr. Olson." Thompson nodded, a self-satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Very well, Mr. Olson. You may proceed." Olson rose fluidly, his expression unreadable. He addressed the judge with respectful deference. "Your Honor, we call our first witness, Mr. David Reynolds, Tesla's head of sales." As Reynolds took his place on the stand, Musk sank back into his seat, overwhelmed by a sudden, draining exhaustion. He had underestimated Thompson's capacity for disdain. He had foolishly believed his public image, his achievements, would command a certain level of deference. He had been profoundly mistaken. Outside, the media frenzy reached its zenith. News trucks crammed the streets, satellite dishes reaching for the sky like metallic sunflowers thirsting for light. Reporters jostled, microphones extended, their voices coalescing into a discordant clamor. Sources inside the courtroom are calling Musk's defense a debacle. One reporter screamed into the camera, his voice tight with manufactured drama. Judge Thompson openly derided the Tesla CEO's initial arguments, practically ordering him to hand the reins to his legal team. Is this the beginning of the end for Elon Musk's reign? Another speculated, her voice dripping with veiled malice. Has the tech icon finally encountered his nemesis in the judicial arena? The digital realm was even more savage. Twitter was a battlefield of memes and sarcastic commentary. Hashtag #MuskFlounders was trending globally. Pundits and armchair jurists dissected Musk's every utterance, every movement, portraying him as an oblivious, arrogant fool stumbling through a legal quicksand. Even some of Musk's most devoted adherents felt a tremor of doubt that a seed of uncertainty began to sprout. Had they been wrong about him? Was he truly the visionary they championed, or simply another overblown celebrity who had stumbled into a crisis beyond his control? Back in the courtroom, David Reynolds was being sworn in. Musk watched him, his thoughts churning. He knew Reynolds was steadfast and capable, but could he withstand Abernathy's relentless interrogation? Could he dissect the carefully constructed narrative of deceit and reveal the underlying truth? Musk closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and struggled to regain his equilibrium. That he had to place his faith in his team, that he had to maintain the conviction that the truth would ultimately surface. Yet as he heard Abernathy commence his cross-examination, a persistent doubt gnawed at the edge of his mind. Had he committed a colossal error by allowing this case to proceed to trial? Had his own vanity blinded him to the lurking perils? A calculated gamble. Charles Olson faced a rigid tableau of anxiety. Pressed in, the faint, pricey scent of his tailoring a sharp contrast to the tense atmosphere. "Elon, with all due respect, this is madness that we had a plan." Musk dismissed him with a flick of his wrist, his attention riveted on Evelyn Reed, who sat erect at the plaintiff's table, her features an inscrutable mask. The gallery hummed, a low drone of speculation magnified by the chamber's heavy quiet. Judge Thompson, a wizened figure presiding from his high seat, adjusted his glasses, a glint of amusement flickering behind the lenses. "That plan is failing, Charles," Musk countered, his voice controlled but laced with steel. "She's constructing a fiction, a distorted image that I need to dismantle it myself, piece by piece." Olson's jaw clenched. "You're walking into a snare, that she's anticipated this, that we don't know what surprises they have waiting." "Then we'll uncover them, won't we?" Musk retorted, a ghost of a smile gracing his lips. He straightened his tie, a silent rebellion against the palpable unease emanating from his lawyers. "I request the opportunity to question the plaintiff directly, Your Honor." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, the sound like a swarm of insects, and even Reed's team seemed momentarily paralyzed. Judge Thompson, however, remained impassive, his face a careful study in judicial impartiality, though Musk suspected barely concealed relish simmered beneath. "Mr. Musk," Thompson began, his tone laced with a hint of scorn. "While I appreciate your zeal, I must remind you of the skill of your counsel that cross-examination is a refined skill, not an arena for impulsive displays." Musk met the judge's gaze squarely. "I am aware of the potential pitfalls. Your Honor, I believe I can best articulate my case through direct interaction." Thompson steepled his fingers, pausing in contemplation as a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, Mr. Musk, I've always favored allowing parties their moment to be heard. And frankly," he paused, leaning forward slightly, "your previous testimony was unconvincing. Perhaps this is warranted. The court grants your request. Mr. Musk will cross-examine Ms. Reed." A wave of astonishment rolled through the room. Olson groaned, a low sound of despair. Reed's lawyers exchanged concerned glances. Musk, however, felt a surge of exhilaration. The electric thrill of a risky venture coursing through him. He rose, straightened his jacket, and moved toward the witness stand. Anticipation hung thick in the air, a palpable tension. The scent of aged paper, polished wood, and suppressed trepidation pervaded everything. Reed watched his approach, eyes narrowed, composure. Unyielding, he felt the immense weight of scrutiny, the pressure of public opinion bearing down. This was it, and no more clever legal arguments. No more outsourced defense that he stood alone, pitted against a woman threatening to unravel his life's work. "Ms. Reed," Musk began, his tone even and steady, masking the turmoil within. "Let's discuss your departure from Tesla." Reed shifted slightly in her seat, her gaze locked onto Musk. "There's little to debate, Mr. Musk. I was unjustly terminated for voicing concerns about unsafe operational practices within the company." "Unsafe practices?" Musk arched a brow. "Could you elaborate?" "Certainly," Reed responded, her voice sharp and professional. "Specifically, I raised misgivings regarding the accelerated production timeline for the Model Y, which I believed jeopardized quality assurance and potentially endangered consumers." "And what specific evidence did you possess to support these claims?" Musk pressed, searching her face for any flicker of uncertainty, any hint of deceit. Reed hesitated, a subtle shift in her demeanor that didn't escape Musk's notice. "I documented numerous instances of defective components, inadequate testing procedures, and coercion from superiors to ignore imperfections." "Did you report these concerns to anyone else at Tesla?" "Yes, I did," Reed confirmed. "I spoke with my immediate supervisor, Mr. David Miller, as well as individuals from the Quality Control Department." "And what was the response?" "They acknowledged my concerns but ultimately dismissed them as overly cautious and detrimental to productivity," Reed declared, a note of bitterness creeping in her voice. Musk paused, letting her words resonate. "Ms. Reed, you are aware that you are under oath, and that perjury carries serious consequences." Reed lifted her chin slightly. "I am, Mr. Musk, and I'm being truthful. Let's delve into these defective components." Musk continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "Can you provide precise examples, model numbers, manufacturing dates, anything tangible to substantiate your accusations?" Reed faltered again, her carefully constructed facade beginning to fray. I don't have those details immediately available." "But you documented them, you stated?" Musk pressed, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "Surely, an individual so concerned with quality would have maintained meticulous records." "I did maintain records," Reed insisted, her voice rising slightly. "But they were misplaced." "Misplaced?" Musk echoed, his eyebrows shooting up. "Misplaced, as in inadvertently lost? Or misplaced, as in conveniently vanished?" Olson shifted in his seat, increasingly uncomfortable. He hadn't anticipated this tactic, this direct, combative approach. That it was audacious, almost reckless, yet undeniably potent. He could see the fissures appearing in Reed's carefully crafted narrative, the subtle signs of disquiet and evasion. Judge Thompson, however, appeared less engaged. He leaned back, a flicker of boredom in his eyes. "Mr. Musk, while I appreciate your intent to defend your enterprise, this is beginning to resemble a fishing expedition. Please adhere to the pertinent facts." Musk disregarded the judge's warning, focusing solely on Reed. Ms. Reed, let's discuss your performance reviews at Tesla. Were they consistently exemplary? Did your superiors express any reservations regarding your work ethic or your compliance with company regulations? Reed's face tightened. My performance evaluations were generally favorable, she conceded. But that doesn't negate the fact that I was wrongfully terminated for raising valid safety issues. Generally favorable, Musk repeated, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. But not entirely correct. Reed remained silent, her eyes darting around the room. Ms. Reed, Musk pressed, his voice softening slightly. Isn't it true that you receive repeated warnings concerning your disruptive behavior, your tendency to undermine your colleagues, and your disregard for established procedures? The courtroom held its breath. The tension was thick, a suffocating blanket that muted all sound. All eyes were riveted on Reed, awaiting her answer, waiting to see if she would crumble beneath the pressure. Reed inhaled deeply, her shoulders slumping slightly. I may have had some disagreements with my colleagues, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Musk leaned in, his gaze unrelenting. Disagreements or insubordination, concerns about safety, or a personal grudge? The truth, Ms. Reed. Tell the truth. The art of deception. Ms. Reed, Elon began, his tone a surprising balm. Almost casual, he leaned against the lectern with deceptive ease, his hands barely touching the polished surface, a far cry from the belligerence he displayed earlier. Thank you for your presence today. Evelyn Reed, perched on the stand, visibly eased. The preceding hour had been a tortuous ballet of objections and legalese, orchestrated by the practiced attorneys. This felt different, like an actual conversation. Of course, Mr. Musk, she replied, some of her lost poise returning. I'm here to provide the truth. And I commend that, Elon stated, his gaze steady yet non-threatening. Before we delve into the more intricate aspects of your testimony, I'd like to gain a clearer understanding of you, if I may. He glanced at Judge Thompson, still reeling from earlier disruptions, who offered only a clipped nod. Evelyn stirred, a subtle crease forming on her forehead, but she acquiesced. I suppose that's acceptable. Splendid, Ms. Reed. You served as a quality control inspector at the Fremont plant, I believe? Yes, for 7 years. 7 years, that's a substantial period. What aspect of that role did you find most gratifying? Evelyn hesitated, taken aback. Gratifying? I felt I was contributing to something vital. Securing the vehicle's integrity, safeguarding the drivers. A worthy cause, Elon affirmed, his voice ringing with sincerity. Outside of your professional life, Ms. Reed, what are your passions? What ignites your spirit? A glimmer of genuine shock flickered across Evelyn's face. This wasn't the hostile inquisition she had braced herself for. I enjoy hiking. I'm active in a local hiking group, and I like to paint. Hiking and painting, exquisite. What sort of vistas do you prefer to immortalize on canvas? Mostly landscapes of the Bay Area, the rolling hills, the rugged coastline, sometimes the austere desert. The desert of raw, untamed beauty, wouldn't you agree? A realm that commands respect. Evelyn nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. Indeed, it can be unforgiving. Precisely. And with hiking, do you favor arduous ascents or peaceful ambles? A balance, really. I relish the challenge of a strenuous climb, but sometimes I simply crave a tranquil walk in the woods to clear my head. Elon leaned in slightly, his voice softening to an intimate murmur. I deeply understand that. The need for quiet reflection, it's essential, wouldn't you say? Particularly in a world clamoring for our attention at every turn. He paused, letting the words resonate. Do you find, Ms. Reed, that your hikes allow you time to contemplate your experiences, to make sense of them? The smile wavered, a hint of suspicion clouding her eyes. Occasionally, yes. And do you ever find yourself reflecting on your tenure at Tesla? A microsecond of hesitation, almost imperceptible, didn't escape Elon. Of course, that IT was a considerable chapter of my life. Considerable, an intriguing descriptor. Did you find the experience positive on the whole? Evelyn's composure frayed. She shifted again, her hands now locked together in her lap. It had its peaks and valleys, as life tends to, but would you assert that you left Tesla feeling valued, appreciated for your contributions? Her voice became strained. I felt I was performing crucial work. Crucial work. But did you feel heard, Ms. Reed? Did you believe your concerns were treated with the gravity they deserved? Evelyn's eyes darted towards her lawyer, who sat ramrod straight at the table, his face an impassive mask. This deviation was unexpected. He prepared her for factual inquiries, for legal sparring, not for what appeared to be a harmless conversation about her recreational pursuits. I performed my job, she stammered. And your job, as you conceived it, was to guarantee the safety and superior quality of the vehicles. Yes. And did you invariably feel that your recommendations were heeded? That your reservations were addressed adequately? Silence descended, heavy and palpable. Evelyn's breathing shallowed, her chest rising and falling with increasing rapidity. Ms. Reed, I assure you I'm not attempting to deceive you, Elon said, his tone remaining placid, almost reassuring. I simply seek to grasp your perspective. Did you invariably feel that your concerns were regarded seriously? No, she whispered, the word barely audible amidst the quiet tension of the court. Elon nodded slowly. No, and when those concerns are dismissed, what emotions did that evoke? Tears began to well in Evelyn's eyes. Frustration, the sense of powerlessness. Powerlessness, a potent emotion. Did you feel, perhaps, that your voice was being suppressed? She nodded, tears now tracing paths down her cheeks. Yes, suppressed. And did that silence, that sense of helplessness, eventually breed resentment? Her lawyer finally rose to his feet, his face flushed with indignation. Objection, Your Honor. Pure conjecture. Judge Thompson, looking increasingly perplexed, sustained the objection. Mr. Musk, kindly confine your inquiries to the pertinent facts of the case. Elon turned to the judge, his expression conveying contrition. Of course, Your Honor. My apologies. I was merely endeavoring to ascertain Ms. Reed's motivations. He turned back to Evelyn, his gaze unwavering. Ms. Reed, let us now address your performance reviews at Tesla. Were you consistently evaluated as exceeding expectations? The seemingly innocuous questions had run their course. The subtle probing had concluded. Now, the scalpel. Evelyn wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara. No. In fact, were there not several evaluations that identified areas necessitating improvement? Yes. Specifically, were you not taken to task for being overly critical, for fixating on trivial details to the detriment of overall productivity? I don't recall the exact phrasing. Elon approached the witness stand, a document in hand. Allow me to jog your memory. He presented the document to Evelyn, who reluctantly accepted it. This is your performance review from June 2017. Would you please read aloud the section concerning areas for development? Evelyn scanned the document, her complexion paling with each passing moment. Her voice trembled as she began to read. Reed demonstrates a keen eye for detail, but often dwells on inconsequential matters, thereby impeding the overall efficiency of the production line. She must prioritize tasks and concentrate on addressing critical safety hazards rather than becoming mired in insignificant details. Elon stepped back, allowing the words to linger. So, Ms. Reed, it would seem that your superiors at Tesla felt that you were, perhaps, excessively focused on minor details, overly critical of matters that didn't necessarily constitute safety risks. That's not true, Evelyn exclaimed, her voice rising in defiance. I was raising valid concerns. They were disregarding me. But your performance reviews suggest otherwise, wouldn't you agree? They intimate that you possessed a tendency to exaggerate, to inflate the importance of relatively minor issues. No, they were trying to silence me. They were trying to discredit me. Elon paused, his expression inscrutable. Ms. Reed, were you disappointed when you did not receive the promotion to Senior Quality Control Inspector in 2018? Evelyn's eyes widened. How did you learn of that? It's a matter of public record, Ms. Reed. But the question persists, were you disappointed? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes. And did you feel, perhaps, that you were unfairly overlooked? Yes. And did that disappointment, that sensation of being undervalued, factor into your decision to depart from Tesla? Evelyn's composure crumbled completely. She dissolved into uncontrollable sobs. They ruined my career, she cried. They silenced me. They destroyed my reputation. Elon stood silently, observing her, his face devoid of emotion. He had exposed the chinks in her armor, laid bare the underlying resentment that fueled her accusations. The art of deception, he knew, wasn't about outright falsehoods. IT was about exposing the truths others attempted to conceal. His lawyer looked on in shock, but Elon knew he was just getting started. Digital footprints. Ms. Reed, Elon began, the steel returning to his voice after a fleeting moment of softness. You presented yourself as a stalwart Tesla advocate, even after your departure. You crafted an image of a devoted employee, driven by concern for the brand's safety and standing. Evelyn straightened, a spark of defiance flickering in her gaze. That remains accurate. The company's interests were always paramount. Always, Elon echoed, a playful note entering his voice that he nodded toward a large screen that had been inert until now. A click later, it illuminated, showcasing a montage of social media posts. Shall we delve into your digital persona? I suspect it paints a somewhat different portrait. The initial exhibit was a captured Twitter thread, dating back roughly half a year after Evelyn left Tesla's employ. The username, unequivocally Evelyn Reed based on linked profiles and shared contacts, bemoaned, did anyone else's Model 3 autopilot try to commit vehicular suicide today, seriously eyeing a Prius? Hashtag Tesla fail, hashtag overhyped. A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. Evelyn's complexion lost its color, her carefully constructed facade failing to mask a surge of anxiety. Ms. Reed, Elon pressed, his tone even, bordering on casual, do you acknowledge this as your utterance? Evelyn hesitated, a beat too long. I might have posted something to that effect. I was exasperated. IT was an isolated event. Isolated? With another click, the screen transitioned to a Facebook post call from a group dedicated to Tesla owners. The same user lamented, 3 hours battling Tesla service over brakes that sound like a banshee. Thinking class action. Anyone else suffering? Hashtag Tesla nightmare, hashtag quality control. This time, denial faltered. All right, yes, that was me. But I was genuinely wrestling with these issues. That I was a customer, no different from anyone else, that I had a right to voice my grievances. A right, undoubtedly, Elon conceded. But does this resonate with the unwavering devotion you portrayed moments ago? Does it align with someone who always puts the company first? He advanced to a third post, an Instagram snapshot of a Tesla charging station, captioned, another defunct supercharger. Looks like I'm marooned in Podunk, Nevada for the foreseeable future. Thanks, Elon. Hashtag Tesla problems, hashtag never again. Evelyn's composure showed fissures. Her hands fluttered in her lap, and her breaths grew rapid and shallow. That it was intended as humor, sarcasm. The internet thrives on sarcasm, Mr. Musk. Indeed. Yet, the frequency and tenor of these jokes suggest a rather consistent sentiment. Wouldn't you concur? A sentiment of profound dissatisfaction with Tesla, persisting well beyond your tenure. He paused, allowing the implications to saturate the room. Silence descended, every gaze laser-focused on Evelyn. She appeared caged, a creature driven into a corner. Now, Ms. Reed, Elon continued, his voice taking on a harder edge, let's turn to your commentary on a prominent automotive industry blog. This blog, as you're aware, commands a substantial readership, including prospective Tesla customers and investors. The screen shifted to display a lengthy comment penned by Evelyn, a response to an article chronicling Tesla's production snags. The commentary was withering, bristling with critiques of Tesla's executive leadership, engineering practices, and overarching business plan. Within this comment, Elon highlighted, You accuse Tesla of shaving margins at the expense of safety, placing profits ahead of people, and deceiving investors concerning its manufacturing prowess. You even venture to suggest that Tesla is teetering on the brink of insolvency. Do you stand by these assertions, Ms. Reed? Evelyn's voice, now thin and reedy, trembled. I was simply offering my perspective. I harbored reservations that I still do. Reservations, or a grudge, Ms. Reed, might have been driven by something other than pure solicitude for public safety and investor welfare. Perhaps simmering bitterness over being bypassed for a promotion? Objection! Reed's attorney erupted, practically vaulting from his chair. Argumentative, harassing the witness. Sustained, the judge declared, though a glint of captivated interest danced in his eyes. Mr. Musk, kindly rephrase. Elon disregarded the reprimand. Isn't it true, Ms. Reed, that you felt unappreciated and disregarded at Tesla? That you believed your efforts went largely unacknowledged? Evelyn's voice scaled upward. That has no bearing. This centers on safety, on ensuring Tesla is held responsible. Does it? Or does it revolve around settling a score, Ms. Reed? About exploiting your testimony to tarnish Tesla's image, to punish them for failing to grant you what you deemed your due? He closed the distance to the edge of the podium, his gaze unwavering, almost hypnotic. Isn't it true, Ms. Reed, that you perceive this legal action as a chance to finally exact your revenge? Evelyn's composure shattered. That's a fabrication, a complete and utter falsehood. I'm here because I'm committed to people's well-being, because I'm determined to prevent further harm. Tears cascaded down her face, dissolving her makeup. Her frame shuddered with sobs. She was a portrait of desolation. Elon retreated, ceding the space to her attorney, who rushed to her side. Murmuring reassurances and offering a tissue, he observed impassively. The courtroom buzzed with suppressed excitement. The digital breadcrumbs had woven a compelling narrative, unveiling a distinct pattern of antagonism and undermining Evelyn's credibility as an impartial observer, regardless of whether her motives were purely vindictive or a tangled blend of genuine apprehension and personal resentment. Elon had effectively sown seeds of doubt regarding her pronouncements. He glanced at his legal team, a faint smile gracing his lips. They appeared both relieved and slightly apprehensive. He had, once more, seized control of the narrative. Charting a course they hadn't foreseen, he was acutely aware that he was treading a razor's edge. His impetuous maneuvers could easily backfire. Yet, he was powerless. To resist, he was compelled to fight. He was driven to expose the truth. As he perceived Yes, the judge announced a brief intermission. Elon leaned back in his chair, a muted satisfaction washing over him. He had dealt a significant blow, but he understood that the war was far from won. The digital trail had offered a glimpse of the truth, but countless layers remained to be peeled back. And he, Elon Musk, was determined to unearth them all, the algorithm's revelation. Ms. Reed. Musk resumed, the earlier wavering gone, replaced by his trademark intensity. We've established the origin of these negative comments. But what if they're more than the isolated gripes of a disgruntled customer? Evelyn Reed squirmed. Silence descended on the courtroom, which had been abuzz only moments before. Every gaze drilled into the witness and the defendant. Judge Thompson, initially dismissive, now sat forward. Curiosity piqued. A faint, rhythmic tick emanated as his pen met the legal pad. I don't follow. Reed faltered, her practiced assurance dissolving. A lone bead of perspiration traced a path down her temple, shimmering under the harsh lights. Musk offered a nod, a predatory light in his eyes. Allow me to elaborate. For months, my team has dissected social media chatter concerning Tesla. Beyond mere mentions, we sought anomalies, discrepancies. He motioned toward a screen concealed until now. IT flickered to life, revealing a spiderweb of interconnected points. This, Musk explained, simplifying the text speak for the jury, is a visualization of an algorithm I helped design, a sophisticated detector of online deceit. Think of it as an internet polygraph. Judge Thompson raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. Are you suggesting Ms. Reed's remarks were amplified by bots, Mr. Musk? More than that, Your Honor, Musk countered, his tone hardening. Orchestrated. Her posts, alongside similar disparagements of Tesla, were systematically elevated, dominating feeds, trends, and searches. This wasn't organic dissatisfaction, but a concerted attack. The screen zoomed, zeroing in on a nexus surrounding Reed's initial postings. Light pulsed along the connecting lines, illustrating their rapid dissemination. Musk indicated a central hub, larger and more active than the rest. This node, he declared, a controlled fury in his voice, is Ground Zero, the command center. We've traced it to a marketing firm known to serve one of Tesla's main rivals. A collective gasp swept through the room. Reed visibly blanched, her grip tightening on the chair's arms. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling. Objection! Reed's lawyer, a rotund man with a permanently flustered expression, finally spoke. Speculation, Your Honor. Unsubstantiated claims lacking foundation. Overruled, Judge Thompson declared, surprisingly firm. The visual evidence, the sheer audacity of the claim, had snagged his interest. Mr. Musk, you must substantiate this allegation. Certainly, Your Honor, Musk replied, a confident smirk playing on his lips. We possess extensive data, logs, IPs, server locations, communication records, irrefutably linking this network to the aforementioned firm. We're prepared to present it at your discretion. He turned to Reed, his gaze unwavering. Ms. Reed, were you cognizant of the artificial amplification of your comments? Reed's eyes darted about, seeking escape. Her narrative was unraveling, laid bare by algorithmic precision. I knew nothing about that, she whispered, barely audible. Did anyone solicit your assistance in spreading your story? Musk pressed, relentless. Suggest hashtags or phrases? Promise to boost visibility? Reed remained mute, panic widening her eyes. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by the judge's rhythmic tapping, a metronome marking the weight of the proceedings. Ms. Reed, Musk continued, his voice softening slightly. I suspect you were manipulated. Perhaps you sincerely believed you were just sharing your experiences, but you were exploited as a pawn in a far grander scheme. He gestured back to the screen, to the intricate web that exposed the scheme. This algorithm doesn't prevaricate. That IT exposes the hidden forces, the shadowy figures seeking to twist truth for their own ends. The image shifted, displaying a heat map of social media traffic. Blazing red zones highlighted regions of intense bot activity, clustered around negative Tesla mentions. Cool green areas denoted authentic opinions. The contrast was stark. For years, Tesla has fought a relentless tide of misinformation. Musk stated, frustration underlining his tone. We've faced accusations ranging from deceptive advertising to environmental neglect. Much of this derives from coordinated actions such as this. He paused, inhaling deeply. This transcends me, transcends Tesla. This is about the diminishing integrity of facts in the digital age, the manipulation of public sentiment via artificial means, the struggle to safeguard authentic discourse from drowning in a robotic chorus. Judge Thompson cleared his throat, riveted to the screen. The initial skepticism had dissolved, replaced by profound concern. He leaned back, the pen forgotten. The gravity of the situation was clearly weighing heavily on him. Mr. Musk, Judge Thompson began, his voice measured. Are you suggesting the plaintiff was an unwitting participant? I am suggesting, Your Honor, that Ms. Reed's valid grievances, if any, were co-opted and weaponized by a malicious third party, Musk clarified. Her awareness is a question she must address. He directed a pointed look at Evelyn Reed. Tension gripped the courtroom. Reed, cornered and exposed, finally crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she hid her face. Her lawyer rushed to her side, whispering frantically. The algorithm, technology's unblinking eye, had revealed a truth far more intricate and disturbing than anyone anticipated. The pursuit of truth in this post-truth world had taken a dramatic turn, leaving all present reeling from the implications. recess, and reckoning. Judge Thompson's gaze lingered on the projection screen, the ghost of the bot network schematic still imprinted on his vision. The courtroom held its breath, a suffocating stillness that dredged up memories of his days battling organized crime. But he cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the tense quiet. The court requires time to consider the ramifications of this newly presented evidence. He nodded to the bailiff. We are in recess for 2 hours. The sharp rap of his gavel echoed, seemingly shattering the last vestiges of composure in the room. Evelyn Reed remained immobile, a solitary tear carving a track through her flawlessly crafted facade. David Mallory, her attorney, buzzed with anxious energy beside her, his complexion ashen under the harsh lights. He murmured urgently, his voice a frayed thread of sound. Evelyn, we need to speak. Immediately. She didn't react, her pupils locked on some unseen point beyond the walls. Mallory grasped her arm, his grip tightening uncomfortably. Evelyn, this is dire, truly dire. Dire seemed a feeble word, a pathetic shrug in the face of the digital deluge that had just swept over them. That a sheen of perspiration dotted his forehead, his bespoke suit feeling suddenly constricting, a burden that he'd viewed this case as a sure win. A sympathetic claimant versus a wealthy defendant with a tarnished reputation. Now, he peered into the abyss of potential indictments, career implosion, and the chilling awareness that he might have been manipulated. He steered her into one of the small conference rooms abutting the courtroom, the humming fluorescent tubes providing a jarring counterpoint to his rising anxiety. He shut the door, severing the gossiping whispers and furtive glances from the gallery. Evelyn, he began, struggling to maintain an even cadence. Tell me everything. Everything about your association with this marketing group. She blinked, her attention returning to him with a bewildered expression. Marketing group? What on earth are you talking about? Mallory raked a hand through his receding hairline. The bots, Evelyn. The algorithm. Musk demonstrated that your posts were boosted by a coordinated web. This reeks of a premeditated scheme. Did you enlist someone to do this? Were you approached by someone offering assistance? She shook her head, her denial unpersuasive. No, I merely voiced my opinions. I have a right to free speech. Of course you do, Mallory soothed, adopting the tone he reserved for recalcitrant witnesses. But the amplification, that's different. That hints at something orchestrated. Evelyn, I need complete candor. Now that if you were involved, even unwittingly, we must formulate a defense. Obstruction, conspiracy, these are grave charges. The words appeared to finally puncture her stunned silence. Her eyes widened, fear eclipsing the earlier blankness. Conspiracy? Obstruction? I wouldn't. A tremor shook her, her painstakingly constructed persona of aggrieved consumer collapsing like a house of cards. Who did you converse with about this? Evelyn. Think carefully. Anyone who suggested avenues to broadcast your message. Anyone who volunteered to broaden your reach. He floundered, seizing at straws, desperate for some nugget of information to salvage the situation. She remained mute, her eyes flitting around the room as if seeking an escape hatch. The silence lengthened, broken only by the frantic drumming of Mallory's pulse. At last, she whispered, her voice a mere exhalation. There was a woman at a convention. She complimented my passion regarding Tesla. She claimed to know individuals who could help me get my voice amplified. Mallory leaned forward, a spark of hope igniting. Her name? What precisely did she say? Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut, as if attempting to summon the memory. I can't recall her name. She was very refined. She mentioned working in public relations. She gave me a car, but I believe I discarded it. Mallory cursed silently. A phantom. Of course, that he should have anticipated as much. And what form of assistance did she propose? She said she could connect me with people, individuals who could magnify my message. She never mentioned bots, or algorithms that I simply assumed. I assumed she was helping me be heard. Her voice fractured, and she began to weep, her body convulsing with sobs. Mallory observed her, his expression grim. He couldn't discern whether she was truthful or a skilled deceiver. Either way, they were in serious jeopardy. He rose and walked to the small, grimy window, peering out at the horde of journalists congregated outside the courthouse. Their cameras were like rapacious eyes. Eager to feast on the spectacle of his client's demise, he envisioned the headlines. Tesla scores victory. Plaintiff exposed as bot puppet. Musk unmasks plot against electric car colossus. His own name would be plastered across the news. Irrevocably linked to this catastrophic case, he turned back to Evelyn, now curled in her chair, her face hidden in her hands. He felt a fleeting pang of something akin to pity, but it was quickly extinguished by the stark reality of his own plight. "Evelyn," he stated, his voice steely, "I need you to grasp something. This transcends Tesla. This concerns your liberty. And mind that we must cooperate. We must divulge the truth. Everything. Failure to do so will result in severe consequences for both of us." He paused, allowing his words to register. He scrutinized her carefully, searching for any inkling of comprehension, any trace of regret. But all he perceived was fear, stark, unadulterated dread. Meanwhile, Judge Thompson sat in his chambers, his thoughts whirling. He reread Musk's testimony, the specifics of the algorithm, the links to the marketing agency. He had initially dismissed Musk as an arrogant showman, but now he was compelled to acknowledge the possibility that he had underestimated him. The ramifications of the bot network were staggering. IT extended beyond merely skewing public sentiment. It threatened the very foundation of the judicial system. If an individual could orchestrate a coordinated campaign to propagate false information and sway public opinion, what other nefarious acts were they capable of? A sudden shiver ran down his spine, a presentiment that this case was far more expansive than he had initially believed. He lifted the receiver and buzzed his clerk. "Compile everything on file pertaining to cybercrime, online manipulation, and potential ties to corporate espionage." He replaced the receiver and leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. He had embarked on this case with an air of self-assuredness, a conviction that he was in command. Now, he felt as if he were teetering on the brink of an abyss, peering into a darkness he couldn't fully fathom. The 2-hour recess stretched into an eternity. Follow the money. The silence in the courtroom had thickened, a palpable dread hanging in the air. Judge Thompson returned, a shadow of disquiet now clouding his features. The jury was dismissed, the question of the bot network's admissibility hanging unresolved. Mallory, ashen and damp with sweat, pointedly avoided Reed's gaze. Reed herself was a statue of forced composure, a facade Thompson suspected barely concealed a burgeoning panic. "Mr. Musk," Thompson's voice cut through the quiet. "Proceed." Musk surged to his feet, an almost feral energy sparking in his eyes. He hadn't seemed this vital since the trial's opening bell. The monitors flared to life, displaying a labyrinth of charts and figures. "Your Honor, with the court's indulgence, I'd like to present a financial analysis. Tedious, perhaps, but its implications are explosive." He swept a hand towards the screen. "This first graph illustrates Tesla's stock performance these past 2 years. The azure line represents our actual trajectory. The crimson dotted line, our projected growth based on prior performance and market predictions." A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery. Even the normally impassive stenographers straightened in their seats. "Observe the precipitous drops in the blue." Musk indicated several sharp declines. Each of these coincides precisely with a surge of negative publicity dogging Tesla, specifically the amplification of Ms. Reed's accusations. A tap on his tablet brought forth a new visual. A correlation between the volume of disparaging tweets about Tesla and the ensuing stock devaluation. The relationship was stark, a near-perfect inverse dance. "We analyzed trading patterns during these tumultuous periods." Musk's voice picked up speed. "We unearthed a pattern of short selling, funneled through shell corporations, timed with laser precision to exploit these downward spirals." Short selling, as you may know, is a wager against a company's success. Investors borrow shares, sell them, and repurchase them later at a hopefully diminished price, pocketing the difference. He paused for effect. "In essence, Certain entities placed bets against Tesla, and Ms. Reed's actions provided the fuel for their profitable wager. Mallory finally found his footing. Objection, Your Honor. Conjecture, there's no established cause. Overruled, Thompson stated, eyes fixed on Musk. Mr. Musk, confine yourself to established facts and verifiable data. Musk inclined his head. Certainly, Your Honor. Now, this next chart, this is where matters grow truly intriguing. A third graph surfaced, contrasting Tesla's stock performance with that of its chief rival, Quantum Motors. The lines mirrored each other, yet with a critical divergence. Tesla's descent coincided with Quantum Motors' ascent. For every dollar Tesla hemorrhaged, Quantum Motors gained approximately 70 cents. Musk enunciated his tone even. This is no accident. This is a direct transfer of wealth, catalyzed by the negative currents generated by Ms. Reed and fanned by the bot network we've previously identified. He zoomed in on a period echoing Reed's most venomous online salvos. During this fortnight, Tesla's stock price plummeted by 15%. Quantum Motors, in contrast, saw a 12% surge. This translates to a direct windfall of approximately $3.2 billion for Quantum Motors, derived solely from Tesla's misfortunes. A collective gasp escaped the gallery. Even Reed appeared stunned. We then traced the financial currents flowing into and out of Quantum Motors. Musk continued, presenting a complex flowchart of transactions. We uncovered a web of offshore accounts, shell corporations, ultimately leading to a marketing firm called Apex Solutions. He spotlighted Apex Solutions on the chart. The very firm Ms. Reed referenced during Mr. Mallory's aggressive cross-examination. They appear to specialize in reputation management, or rather, reputation assassination. Musk swiveled to face Reed directly. Ms. Reed, were you aware that your actions were directly enriching a competitor of Tesla to the tune of billions? Reed remained mute, her gaze flitting around the room before settling on Mallory, who remained impassive, his face buried in his hands. Objection! Harassment, Your Honor. Mallory choked out. Overruled, Thompson's voice sharpened. Ms. Reed will answer. Silence descended. Thick and heavy. Reed's lips trembled, but no words emerged. Musk pressed on. We also unearthed that Apex Solutions received a substantial influx of capital just before Ms. Reed initiated her online campaign. The source? A holding company registered in the Cayman Islands, ultimately traced to the CEO of Quantum Motors, Mr. Richard Harding. He projected a photo of a smug-looking man in a bespoke suit. Richard Harding, ladies and gentlemen, the man who profited handsomely from Ms. Reed's actions, and the likely architect of this entire charade. Thompson stared at Harding's image, his mind reeling. This transcended a simple libel case. This was a meticulously planned assault, a calculated attempt to sabotage a company and manipulate the market. The ramifications were enormous. Mr. Musk, Thompson's voice was grave. Are you suggesting Ms. Reed knowingly conspired to defame Tesla and manipulate its stock price? Musk paused, an unreadable flicker in his gaze. I merely present the facts, Your Honor. The evidence speaks volumes. He turned back to Reed, his voice softer, tinged with something resembling pity. Ms. Reed, you may have been manipulated, a mere pawn in a grander scheme. But the repercussions of your actions are devastating. You help a rival company pilfer billions from Tesla and damage the livelihoods of countless innocent employees. Was it worth it? Reed finally crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, sobs racking her body. I didn't know, she gasped. I swear I didn't know. Mallory rushed to her side, offering a comforting arm. Your Honor, my client is in distress that I request a recess. Thompson ignored him, captivated by the unfolding drama. Keenly aware of the seismic shift within his courtroom, he regarded Musk, a newfound respect blooming in his eyes. He entered looking a fool. He was exiting a force. The court will recess briefly, Thompson declared, his voice resonating with authority. I expect the relevant authorities to be notified during this time. This case has veered into territory requiring immediate investigation. As the courtroom emptied, Thompson remained, fixated on the flickering screens. He pondered Richard Harding, Apex Solutions, the millions exchanged. He considered the bot network, the manipulated tweets, the carefully constructed narrative of animosity and misinformation. He initially perceived this as a clash of egos, a celebrity squabble. Now, he recognized he was at the epicenter of a digital war, a conflict waged not with bullets, but algorithms and falsehoods. And he, Judge Reginald Thompson, was caught in the crossfire. He leaned back, a chill seeping into his bones. This, he suspected, was merely the overture. The tendrils of this conspiracy ran deep, poised to unravel in ways exceeding his wildest imaginings. The mole hunt. The recess felt less like a pause and more like the eye of a hurricane. Judge Thompson, his face a mask of carefully constructed neutrality, returned to the bench, his gaze lingering on Evelyn Reed's vacant chair before settling on Musk. The air in the courtroom crackled with anticipation, thick enough to taste. "Mr. Musk," Thompson began, his voice devoid of its earlier condescension, "you've presented compelling evidence. Before we proceed, perhaps you could shed light on how you anticipated such a complex and, frankly, audacious scheme." Musk steepled his fingers, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Judge Thompson, one doesn't build rockets and electric cars without a healthy dose of paranoia and foresight that, let's just say, I suspected Ms. Reed wasn't acting alone for quite some time." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air before continuing. "About 18 months ago, we started noticing subtle anomalies within Tesla's internal communications. Information, seemingly innocuous at first, was leaking, not blueprints or trade secrets, but rather seemingly irrelevant details. A shift in project timelines, a change in supplier, a slightly revised marketing strategy. Individually, they were insignificant. Collectively, they painted a picture." Musk gestured towards his legal team. "We began a counterintelligence operation that we called Project Nightingale after Florence Nightingale, the nurse who meticulously observed her patients for the smallest changes." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Thompson, his eyes narrowed, leaned forward. "And Project Nightingale involved planting false information," Musk stated bluntly. "Controlled inconsistencies within internal memos, emails, and even casual conversations. Each piece of misinformation was unique, tailored to a specific individual within Tesla, that a digital breadcrumb trail, if you will." The gallery erupted in hushed whispers. Thompson banged his gavel, restoring a semblance of order. "Mr. Musk, are you admitting to deliberately disseminating false information within your own company?" "Admitting, Judge? I'm explaining. Think of it as a security audit. We created multiple versions of the same document, each with a minor alteration. One version might state that the Cybertruck's launch date was pushed back by a month. Another might claim we were considering a new battery supplier in Nevada. These details were then subtly leaked to different employees." He clicked a remote, and a diagram appeared on the courtroom screen. It resembled a complex spiderweb, with names connected by lines of varying thickness. "This," Musk announced, "is a visual representation of Project Nightingale. Each node represents a Tesla employee. The lines indicate the flow of information, specifically which false detail each employee was privy to." Thompson examined the diagram, his brow furrowed. "And how does this connect to Ms. Reed?" Each planted inconsistency was designed with a unique digital signature. Small variations in formatting, hidden metadata, even subtle linguistic quirks. These signatures allowed us to track where each piece of misinformation ended up. When Ms. Reed began her public campaign against Tesla, we cross-referenced her online statements with our database of planted leaks. Musk took a deep breath, and that's when we discovered the pattern. Ms. Reed consistently and almost exclusively referenced information that had been leaked to a single individual within Tesla, a mid-level engineer named, let's call him SourceX. He paused for effect. SourceX was privy to the false information about a potential battery supplier in Nevada, but he was also told, falsely, that the Model Y production line was experiencing unexpected delays due to a shortage of a specific microchip. Both of these details, and several others unique to SourceX, found their way into Ms. Reed's online statements. Thompson, his initial skepticism visibly crumbling, asked, "Did you confront this?" Source X. "We did." Source X initially denied everything. He claimed he never spoke to Ms. Reed, never shared any internal information with anyone outside the company. But confronted with the irrefutable evidence, the digital signatures, the precise matches between the planted leaks and Ms. Reed's statements, he eventually confessed. Musk's voice hardened. He admitted to being contacted by a representative of Quantum Motors months earlier. He was offered a consulting position, a substantial sum of money, in exchange for providing market intelligence on Tesla. He claims he didn't realize the information would be used to manipulate the stock market, that he was merely providing insights into Tesla's internal operations. He shrugged. Whether he's telling the truth about his motives, I can't say. But he confirmed that he funneled information, both real and fabricated, to Quantum Motors, who then, directly or indirectly, supplied it to Ms. Reed. The courtroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the ventilation system. Judge Thompson rubbed his chin, his gaze fixed on the spiderweb diagram on the screen. The arrogance that had characterized his earlier demeanor had vanished, replaced by a palpable sense of awe. "Mr. Musk," he said finally, his voice subdued, "you anticipated this attack. You actively prepared for it. You created a sophisticated counterintelligence operation to identify the source of the leaks and track their dissemination. This is remarkable." A faint smile touched Musk's lips. "Necessity is the mother of invention, Judge. When you're constantly facing attacks from competitors, short sellers, and, well, let's just say various interested parties, you learn to be proactive." Thompson leaned back in his chair, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom, but he seemed to be seeing everything. The lawyers, the journalists, the spectators, in a new light. The narrative had shifted. Musk was no longer the arrogant billionaire facing a legitimate lawsuit. He was a target, a victim of a meticulously planned and executed conspiracy. "The implications of this are significant," Thompson murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "If Quantum Motors deliberately manipulated Tesla's stock price by disseminating false information through Ms. Reed, then we are dealing with a far more serious matter than a simple libel case." He looked directly at Musk. "Mr. Musk, did you inform the relevant authorities about Source X and his connection to Quantum Motors?" "Immediately," Musk replied. "The FBI is currently investigating." Thompson nodded slowly. "I see. This court will, of course, cooperate fully with the FBI investigation. In light of this new information, and considering Ms. Reed's current state, I am inclined to—" He paused, searching for the right words. "To reassess the situation. Consider all available options." He turned to his clerk. "Schedule a meeting with the prosecution and defense teams in chambers that we need to discuss the next steps in this case and the potential implications for the ongoing federal investigation." As the courtroom buzzed with renewed energy, Judge Thompson rose from his chair, his expression thoughtful, almost pensive. He glanced one last time at Musk, a flicker of something, respect, apprehension, in his eyes before disappearing through the door behind the bench. The mole hunt was over, but the real game, it seemed, was just beginning. Enter the CEO. A hush fell over the courtroom, deeper than the drone of ventilation. Julian Thorne, Quantum Motors' formidable CEO, entered less like a witness and more like a conquering hero surveying his domain. His bespoke suit, a testament to Italian craftsmanship, sculpted his athletic physique that a granite jaw and laser-like focus telegraphed a lifetime of unchallenged authority. His gaze swept the room, pausing imperceptibly too long on Musk, a ghost of a sneer playing at the corner of his mouth. Judge Thompson observed Thorne with a keen, assessing eye. He'd seen a parade of executives in his courtroom, yet Thorne projected a different aura, one of glacial ambition and controlled ruthlessness. Thompson adjusted his spectacles, his initial skepticism toward Musk waning as he found himself absorbed in the unfolding drama. The libel case had mutated into a high-stakes gambit. Thorne's arrival, a pivotal maneuver. Thorne's voice, polished and resonant, filled the room as he swore his oath that he settled into the witness chair, radiating an almost theatrical boredom. Across the room, Musk, usually a whirlwind of kinetic energy, sat frozen, a study in concentrated observation, his eyes like slivers of Arctic ice. Sarah Chun, the prosecuting attorney, a young woman with sharp intelligence, approached Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, for the record, please state your full name and occupation." "Julian Thorne, Chief Executive Officer of Quantum Motors." The words were a declaration, an implicit rebuke to anyone feigning ignorance. Chun began with innocuous inquiries, carefully constructing a profile of Quantum as a paragon of innovation and success, a calculated contrast to the picture painted by Reed's digital onslaught against Tesla. Then, the subtle shift in tempo. "Mr. Thorne," Chen's voice gained an edge. "Are you acquainted with Evelyn Reed?" A nanosecond of hesitation betrayed Thorne. "I am aware of her. She's a vocal critic of the electric vehicle sector, as I understand it." He offered a dismissive gesture. "At Quantum, we champion free speech." Chen's eyebrow arched. "Champion? Or perhaps orchestrate?" "Objection." Mr. Davies, Thorne's seasoned counsel, thundered. "Speculation, Your Honor." "Sustained." Thompson ruled, his gaze unwavering from Thorne. He sensed a subtle game of calculated omissions. Chun advanced, presenting evidence of Reed's frenzied online activity, underscoring the sheer volume of negative posts and the coordinated nature of the bot network. Thorne remained unflappable, his responses carefully measured. He professed ignorance of the bot network, denying any Quantum affiliation with Reed. "Mr. Thorne, does Quantum Motors routinely gather competitive intelligence?" Chen's tone was clipped and precise. "Naturally," Thorne responded smoothly. "Standard practice that we analyze competitor products, pricing, marketing, every facet that informs our competitive strategy, including," Chun pressed, "the propagation of misinformation and manipulation of public sentiment." Davies shot to his feet again. "Objection," leading the witness. Judge Thompson stroked his chin, his eyes fixed on Thorne. "Overruled. Mr. Thorne, you will answer the question." Thorne's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Quantum Motors does not engage in unethical or illegal practices. Our intelligence gathering is exclusively for legitimate business purposes." Chun paused, letting the silence resonate before turning to Musk. "Mr. Musk, do you have any questions for Mr. Thorne?" Musk rose deliberately, a transformation rippling through him. The seemingly disheveled figure, struggling to parry earlier blows, had vanished. In his place stood a figure of coiled intensity, eyes blazing with focused intelligence. "Mr. Thorne," Musk began, his voice surprisingly low yet penetrating the courtroom. "You stated that Quantum respects free speech. Commendable. But does respect for free speech extend to financing a campaign of defamation?" Thorne's composure flickered like a faulty bulb. "I haven't the slightest idea what you're talking about." Musk smiled, a sharp, dangerous flash of teeth. "Let's discuss Source X. Remember him, Mr. Thorne? The Tesla engineer who, for a substantial sum, shared proprietary information, schematics, internal communications with Quantum." Thorne's face remained a mask, but Thompson noted the minute clenching of jaw muscles. Musk continued. "Source X, during extensive interviews with the FBI, detailed numerous meetings with Quantum representatives. He identified individuals, provided dates, locations, even recorded conversations." Musk paused for dramatic effect. He also divulged the existence of a specific directive, originating from your office, Mr. Thorne, to undermine Tesla's reputation by any means necessary. Davies erupted in a frenzy of objections, but Judge Thompson silenced him with a wave. He watched, fascinated, as Thorne's carefully constructed edifice began to crumble. Musk turned to Chun. "Ms. Chun, please present Exhibit G." A document materialized on the screen, a wire transfer authorization. The recipient, Evelyn Reed. The sender, a shell corporation registered in the British Virgin Islands, bearing a single signatory, Julian Thorne. A low rumble swept through the courtroom. Thorne's complexion had drained of all color. His eyes darted like a trapped animal. Musk pressed on. "And then there's Exhibit H. A series of emails recovered from Source X's hard drive. Emails detailing the strategic deployment of the bot network, the curated talking points, the targeted individuals, including myself and Tesla. These emails, Mr. Thorne, were addressed directly to you, with your express approval and instructions. Another exhibit flashed on the screen. Excerpts from the damning emails, bearing Thorne's unmistakable digital signature, outlining the systematic amplification of negativity, the manipulation of social media trends, the calculated discrediting of Tesla's technology. Thorne remained mute, arrogance supplanted by raw fear. The confident CEO, the titan of industry, was collapsing in real time. Musk approached the witness stand, his voice softening to a conspiratorial murmur. Mr. Thorne, did you really think you could outrun the truth? Did you imagine a coordinated assault, fueled by malice and fabrication, would evade detection? Did you underestimate the enduring force of integrity? Thorne finally spoke, his voice raspy and diminished. I had no knowledge of these activities. A feeble, unconvincing denial. Musk shook his head slowly. That contradicts Source X's testimony to the FBI, Mr. Thorne, and it certainly flies in the face of the evidence. He retreated, allowing the weight of the evidence to bury Thorne. Judge Thompson leaned forward, his gaze sharp. The initial hubris he had seen in Thorne was gone, replaced by a profound disquiet. He understood now that he hadn't merely been overseeing a libel case. He'd been an unwitting spectator in a corporate war, a merciless struggle fought in the digital shadows. Where truth was the first casualty, he'd underestimated the players involved. He addressed Thorne, his voice firm and edged with steel. Mr. Thorne, you are advised to seek legal counsel immediately. Based on the evidence presented, you may be facing serious criminal charges. The courtroom fell silent, broken only by Thorne's shallow, ragged breaths. The once powerful So sat slumped, his empire dissolving around him. The hunter had become prey as Thorne was led from the courtroom. Judge Thompson turned his gaze to Musk, an enigma. Audacious, unconventional, perhaps even reckless, yet undeniably possessing a spark of brilliance. He had not only defended himself against a seemingly frivolous lawsuit, but had unmasked a conspiracy reaching the highest echelons of corporate power. Reed versus Musk had become something far more profound. It was a testament to the resilience of truth, a chilling cautionary tale about the pitfalls of unchecked ambition, and a potent reminder that, even in the digital age, David could still fell Goliath. And Judge Thompson knew, with a growing sense of foreboding, that this was only the opening act. Justice served. The courtroom air, thick enough to taste, reeked of exposed falsehoods. Judge Thompson, a statue carved from granite, pivoted, his laser focus settling on Julian Thorne. The quantum motor CEO, whose confidence once seemed woven into his very being, now resembled a punctured ego, his expensive suit hanging like a shroud. Mr. Thorne, the judge began, his voice a low rumble carrying the force of precedent. Your testimony reveals a pattern so deeply troubling it borders on the sociopathic, an utter disregard for ethical boundaries, a calculated scheme to mislead the public, and quite frankly, an astonishing dearth of honor. Thorne squirmed, his gaze skittering across the room. Desperate to avoid the judge's penetrating stare, he parted his lips, perhaps to issue yet another carefully rehearsed denial, but Thompson silenced him with an incisive chop of his hand. Enough, Mr. Thorne. Your words are now without value. The evidence has taken center stage. You attempted to orchestrate a vile campaign against Tesla, propagating falsehoods and outright fabrications. You bribed individuals to parrot your propaganda. You turned social media into a weapon to wound a competitor, all achieved with a cold, calculating efficiency. The judge leaned forward, his voice sharpening to an icy point. Let me be unequivocally clear. This court holds such perfidy in utter contempt. Your actions not only breach ethical norms, but also tread perilously close to criminal conduct. I will be forwarding all pertinent evidence to the appropriate authorities for a full investigation. You are dismissed, Mr. Thorne, and I strongly advise you seek immediate legal representation that you'll require it. Thorne, the color draining from his face, pushed himself up, the ghost of his former swagger extinguished, he faltered slightly as he shuffled towards the exit. The only sound the crisp tap of Italian leather on polished marble. He didn't dare look back. Judge Thompson then redirected his attention to Evelyn Reed, who sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her eyes wide with a cocktail of fear and utter disbelief. The carefully spun yarn she presented, the image of a consumer wronged, had unraveled into nothing. Now, she was merely a puppet on strings, exposed and defenseless. Ms. Reed, Judge Thompson intoned, all warmth absent from his tone. Your lawsuit against Mr. Musk and Tesla was, from its inception, built on a foundation of deceit. You portrayed yourself as an impartial consumer, motivated by genuine concerns regarding Tesla vehicle safety. However, the evidence now before this court paints a dramatically different truth. He paused, allowing his words to resonate. You were not a neutral consumer. You were an active participant in a coordinated assault on Tesla's reputation. You amplified baseless allegations, disseminated disinformation, and you did so fully aware of the damage you were inflicting to in essence, you functioned as a foot soldier in Mr. Thorne's corporate vendetta. A visible tremor ran through Evelyn Reed, her meticulously applied makeup failing to mask the panic rising within. She attempted to speak, but her throat constricted, leaving her mute. Therefore, Judge Thompson declared, his voice booming through the chamber, I hereby dismiss your claims against Mr. Musk and Tesla with prejudice. Furthermore, you are ordered to reimburse Tesla for all legal expenses incurred as a result of this frivolous lawsuit. A collective gasp swept the courtroom. The judgment was absolute, indisputable. Evelyn Reed had not merely lost her case. She faced financial ruin, the weight of the situation crashed down upon her. Evelyn Reed dissolved into unrestrained sobs. Her face contorted in despair. She turned towards Elon Musk. Mr. Musk, she begged, her voice cracking with anguish. Please. I didn't realize what I was doing, that I was desperate, just trying to make ends meet. They offer me a sum, and I needed the money. I truly did, that I am incredibly sorry. Please, don't condemn me. Musk, who had remained silent throughout, simply observed her, his expression an enigma. There was no pity there, no flicker of forgiveness, only a cold, dispassionate appraisal. You exercised your free will, Ms. Reed, he stated, his voice even but edged with steel. You chose to engage in a campaign of calculated lies and misrepresentation. You chose to injure my company, my personnel, and my shareholders. You chose to prioritize monetary gain over integrity. Now, you must confront the ramifications of that decision. Evelyn Reed's crying intensified, spiraling into near hysteria. She lurched forward, attempting to grasp Musk's hand in supplication, but a court officer intervened, gently but firmly restraining her. Please, she wailed, her voice fracturing with desperation. I'll do anything. Just please, spare me from this devastation. Musk remained unmoved, a monument of impassivity. He gave his legal team a subtle nod, a practically imperceptible sign of satisfaction. They began gathering documents, their expressions revealing a muted triumph. Judge Thompson, his face still a mask of disapproval, brought his gavel down with a resounding thud. This court stands adjourned. The courtroom exploded with activity as reporters raced to file stories. Lawyers huddled to analyze the implications, and spectators buzzed with excited chatter. Evelyn Reed remained rooted to the plaintiff's table, her body racked with sobs, an outcast in a space that had once promised her solace. A.S. Musk prepared to depart. He paused, casting a fleeting backward glance at Evelyn Reed. There was no gloating in his gaze, no sense of sweet victory, only a world weariness that seemed to penetrate to his core. That he had secured the first victory, but the encompassing battle was far from resolution. The tangled web of corporate deceit was a deep affliction, and he had only managed to scratch its callous surface. Outside, a mass of reporters awaited, microphones and cameras raised, ready to record his every utterance. Musk, however, delivered only a concise statement. Justice has prevailed, he said, his voice even and devoid of emotion. But our commitment to the pursuit of truth and transparency remains unwavering. He then entered his waiting vehicle, the tinted windows obscuring him from prying eyes. As the car pulled away, leaving the courthouse behind, Musk knew he had launched a series of responses of far-reaching magnitude. The FBI probe had only just begun, and the truths it would expose, he suspected, would be far more shocking than anything he could have imagined. The hard-fought win in court was simply a prelude, a brief moment of calm in a long and consuming journey. The true battle, the fight, against corruption and the manipulation of hearts and minds, had only just begun. The aftermath, vindication. The throng outside the courthouse was a living, breathing beast. Microphones bristled like metallic quills, each attempting to capture the first utterance from the victor. Camera flashes popped in erratic bursts, momentarily blinding, then painting the scene in stark relief. The air, thick with anticipation, smelled faintly of rain and something akin to burnt electricity. Elon Musk, flanked by his legal team, a noticeably less harried-looking group than they had been weeks ago, stepped onto the makeshift podium. He adjusted the microphone, the metallic squeal momentarily silencing the crowd. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt, subtly displaying the Tesla logo, and jeans at a deliberate attempt, perhaps, to appear less the billionaire and more the engineer fighting for his creation. I want to thank the court and Judge Thompson for ultimately seeing through the charade presented by Ms. Reed and, frankly, orchestrated by Quantum Motors. Musk began, his voice calm but carrying the weight of controlled anger. This was never about libel. This was about an attempt to damage Tesla, to undermine our mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. He paused, letting the words sink in. The only sound was the clicking of cameras. Today isn't just a victory for Tesla. It's a victory for innovation, for truth, and for the countless individuals who dedicate their lives to building a better future. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal shouted, "Mr. Musk, do you plan to pursue further legal action against Quantum Motors?" Musk's lips curved into a thin smile. "Let's just say we are cooperating fully with the relevant authorities. The FBI's involvement speaks volumes." He let that hang in the air, a tantalizing breadcrumb for the hungry media. Another reporter, this one from a tech blog, yelled, "Mr. Musk, many see this as a David and Goliath story. Do you agree?" The analogy has some merit. Musk conceded, but David still needed a slingshot and a well-aimed stone. In this case, the slingshot was the truth, and the stone was the irrefutable evidence of a calculated campaign to deceive. He glanced at his lead attorney, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Then, shifting gears, Musk's tone turned more earnest. But this experience has highlighted a far more pervasive problem: the weaponization of online disinformation. He paused, allowing the shift to register. Therefore, I'm announcing today the launch of a new initiative, Project Veritas AI. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Project Veritas AI will be dedicated to developing and deploying advanced AI tools to detect and combat the spread of bots and disinformation campaigns online. That we will be open sourcing our technology, making it freely available to researchers, journalists, and anyone committed to fighting the erosion of truth in the digital age. He continued, "This isn't just about protecting Tesla. It's about safeguarding the integrity of our entire information ecosystem, that we need to empower individuals to discern fact from fiction, to identify malicious actors, and to hold them accountable for their actions." The questions came thick and fast after that, a cacophony of inquiries about the specifics of Project Veritas AI, its funding, its potential applications. Musk, fielding them with practiced ease, provided enough details to satisfy the immediate curiosity while carefully guarding the truly sensitive information. He emphasized the collaborative nature of the initiative, stressing the need for a collective effort to combat the growing threat of online manipulation. As the press conference wound down, Musk offered a final statement. "This case has been a stark reminder that even the most powerful institutions are vulnerable to attack, but it has also shown that the truth, when relentlessly pursued, will always prevail." He gave a curt nod and turned to re-enter the courthouse, leaving behind a frenzy of reporters scrambling to file their stories. The media reaction was swift and overwhelmingly positive. Headlines blared across news websites. Musk triumphs over Quantum Motors smear campaign. Tesla CEO exposes corporate espionage plot. And Musk launches Project Veritas AI to combat disinformation. The Wall Street Journal ran an op-ed praising Musk's legal acumen and unwavering dedication to uncovering the truth. The author, a seasoned legal analyst, wrote, "While Musk's initial approach may have seemed unconventional, his strategic dismantling of Reed's credibility and his subsequent exposure of Quantum Motors' clandestine activities demonstrated a masterful understanding of both the law and the digital landscape. He transformed a seemingly frivolous libel case into a powerful indictment of corporate malfeasance." TechCrunch hailed Project Veritas AI as a game-changer in the fight against online disinformation. The article highlighted the potential of open-source AI tools to empower citizen journalists and researchers to identify and expose coordinated manipulation campaigns. Social media buzzed with comments, ranging from admiration for Musk's tenacity to cautious optimism about the potential impact of Project Veritas AI. Even Judge Thompson, initially skeptical of Musk's self-representation, found himself subtly lionized in the press coverage that he was portrayed as a fair and impartial arbiter of justice, a bulwark against corporate overreach. The narrative subtly shifted, casting him not as the antagonist, but as a crucial element in the triumph of truth. Evelyn Reed, however, became a pariah. Her social media accounts were flooded with vitriol, and her professional reputation lay in ruins. The details of her involvement in the Quantum Motors scheme, meticulously documented in court, became public knowledge, forever tainting her image. She was no longer seen as a victim, but as a willing participant in a malicious conspiracy. Back at Tesla headquarters, the atmosphere was jubilant. Employees celebrated the victory, relieved that the cloud of uncertainty had finally lifted. Musk, however, remained focused. He knew that this was just one battle in a much larger war. The FBI investigation into Quantum Motors was ongoing, and the potential ramifications were far-reaching. He had exposed a network of deceit, but he suspected that it ran deeper than he initially imagined. Yes, he looked out at the sprawling Tesla factory, a symbol of innovation and progress. Musk felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had not only defended his company against a malicious attack, but he had also exposed a dangerous vulnerability in the fabric of society, and he was determined to do everything in his power to fix it. The victory felt good, vindicating his initial decision to fight. But the road ahead would be long, complicated, and very, very interesting. He knew the real work had just begun. Falling stars. The whir of the helicopter blades faded as Evelyn Reed stepped onto the cracked asphalt of the private airstrip. The Florida sun, usually a comforting blanket, felt like a spotlight, burning away the last vestiges of her composure. She tugged her oversized sunglasses further down her nose, hoping to shield herself not just from the light, but from the judging eyes she imagined everywhere. There were none, not here, not yet. Just the pilot, giving her a curt nod, and the promise of anonymity in the rented minivan waiting nearby. Evelyn hadn't spoken a word since leaving the courthouse. The torrent of online vitriol had been a physical blow, each tweet, each meme, a stinging slap. The carefully crafted narrative of victimhood had crumbled, replaced by the harsh reality of being branded a liar, a pawn, a tool of corporate malice. The legal fees, astronomical even before the disastrous verdict, were now a crushing weight. Her savings, once a comfortable cushion, had evaporated like morning mist. The condo in Boca Raton, once a symbol of her success, was now a gilded cage she could no longer afford. She fumbled with the keys to the minivan, the cheap plastic digging into her palm. The scent of stale air freshener filled her nostrils as she climbed inside. It was a far cry from the chauffeured SUVs she had become accustomed to during the trial. Courtesy of Quantum Motors, a cold wave washed over her. They wouldn't be offering those perks anymore. Driving north, away from the suffocating presence of media, she felt the landscape mirroring her internal state. The vibrant greens of the coastal palms gave way to the scrubby browns of the interior, the bustling beaches replaced by desolate stretches of highway. She stopped at a roadside diner, the kind with faded vinyl booths and the aroma of burnt coffee clinging to the air. She ordered a black coffee, the bitterness of familiar comfort. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, didn't recognize her. Evelyn was just another face, another weary traveler seeking refuge in a lukewarm cup. That night, she checked into a motel on the outskirts of Ocala. The room was small, the bed lumpy, the television flickering with static, but it was quiet. She turned off the lights and lay in the darkness, the silence amplifying the gnawing fear in her stomach. Sleep offered no escape, only a restless parade of accusatory faces and mocking headlines. Days bled into weeks. She drifted from motel to motel, using cash to avoid leaving a digital trail. She ate sparingly, the knot of anxiety in her stomach tightening with each passing day. The news reports she occasionally glimpsed on dusty motel televisions offered no solace. Her name was synonymous with scandal, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and broadcast on cable news. The career she had meticulously built was in ruins. The reputation she had so fiercely guarded tarnished beyond repair. Meanwhile, at Quantum Motors, the mood was one of barely contained panic. The carefully orchestrated libel suit, meant to cripple Tesla and pave the way for Quantum's electric vehicle dominance, had backfired spectacularly. Musk's counteroffensive had not only exposed their involvement, but had also triggered a chain reaction of devastating consequences. The first domino to fall was the stock price that IT plummeted, erasing billions in market capitalization. Investors, spooked by the revelations of corporate espionage and manipulated testimony, dumped their shares in a frantic sell-off. The company's carefully cultivated image of innovation and ethical leadership lay in tatters. Then came the internal power struggles. The board of directors, furious at being blindsided by Thorne's aggressive tactics, demanded accountability. Julian Thorne, the CEO, the architect of the entire scheme, found himself isolated, his carefully constructed power base crumbling around him. The board meeting was a bloodbath. Accusations flew, fingers pointed, and alliances shattered. Thorne, his face flushed with anger and disbelief, attempted to defend his actions, arguing that the ends justified the means, but his words fell on deaf ears. The board, desperate to salvage what remained of the company's reputation and prevent further legal repercussions, voted unanimously to remove him from his position. He was escorted from the building by security, his belongings packed into a cardboard box. The press, alerted to the unfolding drama, swarmed the entrance, their cameras flashing, their questions relentless. Thorne, his face a mask of grim resignation, refused to comment. He knew the game was up. The FBI investigation, initially focused on the libel suit, had expanded to encompass a wider range of potential crimes, including corporate espionage, securities fraud, and obstruction of justice. Thorne was now squarely in the crosshairs. His lawyers, once confident of their ability to navigate the legal minefield, now spoke in hushed tones, warning of potential indictments and lengthy prison sentences. As Thorne's carefully constructed world crumbled around him, he found himself alone, abandoned by the very people who had once lauded him as a visionary. The phone calls stopped, the invitations dried up, and the sycophants vanished. He was left with the bitter taste of failure and the daunting prospect of facing the consequences of his actions. The media, sensing a feeding frenzy, descended upon Thorne with gleeful abandon. Every aspect of his life was scrutinized, every past transgression unearthed. His carefully crafted image of corporate titan was replaced by the unflattering portrait of a ruthless schemer, willing to stop at nothing to achieve his goals. The legal battles that followed were protracted and brutal. Thorne fought back with every resource at his disposal, hiring the best lawyers, launching countersuits, and attempting to discredit his accusers. But the evidence against him was overwhelming that he was eventually found guilty on multiple counts and sentenced to a significant prison term. The fall of Quantum Motors and the downfall of Julian Thorne sent shockwaves through the corporate world, IT served as a stark reminder that even the most powerful individuals and organizations were not above the law, and that the pursuit of profit at any cost could have devastating consequences. And somewhere, in a dingy motel room, Evelyn Reed heard the news and felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction, but was quickly swallowed by the deeper, darker pit of her own despair. The stars had fallen for everyone to T.O. Mars and beyond. The desert night, a soothing balm on his skin, whispered of creosote and rain long past. Elon surveyed the Nevada gigafactory from a low rise, its sprawling form a hive of tireless industry. Above, the star-studded abyss of the night sky glittered, a diamond dust scattering across infinity. Lawsuits, corporate skullduggery, even Tesla's immediate prospects faded into insignificance. His thoughts were fixed on Mars. The rusty orb, a steady glimmer in the void, commanded his attention. Thorne, Reed. Their machinations were mere static in the grand composition of progress. Mars embodied the true gauntlet, the ultimate examination of human innovation and grit. A refuge, a safeguard for civilization, a monument to our limitless capacity. He pictured a Martian dawn, ethereal sunlight caressing the ochre plains, habitats, research facilities. Nascent crops, struggling skyward from alien soil, filled his mind's eye. Children, born beneath a foreign sun, forging a destiny among the stars, danced in his dreams that a distant coyote's plaintive call shattered the reverie. A genuine, almost youthful smile touched his lips. Earth still held him, bound by its tangled affairs. Yet, the Martian flame burned brighter than ever. The Quantum Motors verdict hadn't just cleared his name. It had reignited his purpose, proving that with unyielding resolve and an arsenal of truth, even the seemingly impossible could be achieved. He turned back to the factory, the steady pulse of its machinery a grounding reminder of the tasks at hand. A Herculean labor awaited him, a labyrinth of obstacles to navigate. But tonight, beneath the universe's cold, watchful gaze, a surge of near-audacious certainty coursed through him. He returned to his waiting car. A Tesla, naturally, its silhouette barely discernible in the gloom. Anya, a young woman with watchful eyes, held the door open. "A late one, Mr. Musk?" she inquired, a note of concern coloring her tone. He grinned. "Just getting started, Anya, just getting started." Judge Reginald Thompson sat encased within the mahogany confines of his chambers, the silence now a palpable burden, not a welcome balm. Recent weeks replayed in his mind, the early self-assurance, the casually condescending pronouncements. He dismissed Elon Musk as just another pampered celebrity, accustomed to bending the rules that he'd been profoundly, unequivocally wrong. The evidence presented by Musk's team, the meticulous dismantling of Thorne's conspiracy, the sheer gall of the plot, had been a revelation. Blinded by the spectacle, Musk's unconventional persona, his forthright declarations, he'd failed to recognize the core, the unwavering resolve, the searing intellect burning beneath the surface that he knew amends were necessary. A mere apology would ring hollow. He'd publicly misconstrued Musk, permitting prejudice to cloud his judgment. Acknowledgement was needed, not just to Musk, but to the world. He painstakingly drafted a statement, choosing each word with care. That a complete retraction was impossible. It would be disingenuous. However, he could express regret, acknowledge the compelling new evidence, and commend Musk's tenacity in unearthing the truth. The following morning, a barrage of camera flashes greeted him. Like an angry swarm descended, he cleared his throat and began to read. "Regarding Quantum Motors versus Elon Musk, I offer the following statement. During initial proceedings, I may have projected a degree of skepticism concerning Mr. Musk and his defense. This skepticism, I now understand, was premature. The evidence presented by Mr. Musk's legal team has illuminated a far more intricate and disturbing narrative than was initially apparent." He paused. Inhaling deeply, he felt the weight of their focus, the unspoken inquiries pressing on him. "While my dedication to impartiality and the pursuit of justice remains unwavering, I concede that my initial assessment of Mr. Musk may have been colored by preconceived notions and incomplete information, that I commend Mr. Musk and his team for their diligence in revealing the truth and exposing this conspiracy. The court has received a crucial lesson in the importance of maintaining an open mind and critically evaluating all evidence, irrespective of initial impressions. He concluded the statement, his voice resolute. This wouldn't erase past missteps, but it was a genesis, a step toward reclaiming his own integrity, reaffirming his commitment to justice. As he left the podium, a curious lightness enveloped him. He had confronted his failings, confessed his error. It was arduous, but essential. Perhaps, he mused, redemption was still possible. Perhaps he could extract wisdom from this ordeal, evolving into a more discerning judge, a more equitable arbiter of the law. Back at Tesla headquarters, Elon navigated his office floor, his mind already hurtling forward. The legal skirmish had ended, the dust settled, but the campaign against deceit and corporate corruption had just begun. Project Veritas AI was coalescing, an intricate algorithm crafted to detect and expose manipulated narratives, bot swarms, and other forms of digital trickery. He stole a glance at the array of screens displaying live data feeds, stock tickers, news headlines, social media trends. World was a maelstrom, an incessant torrent of information and disinformation. Yet, within that chaos, he believed, lay truth, and his purpose was to unearth it, expose it, and harness it to forge a brighter future. That he ceased his pacing, drawing closer to the window, and gazed at the sprawling Tesla complex below, a vibrant hub of activity, a testament to human ingenuity and synergy. Beyond the factory, beyond the city, beyond the planet, stretched the vast, uncharted frontier of space. That he contemplated the challenges ahead, the technological riddles, the logistical nightmares, the sheer audacity of attempting to colonize another world. But he remained undeterred. He was propelled by a vision of a future where humanity was a multi-planetary species, a future where our potential knew no bounds. He turned from the window, a determined gleam in his eyes. Battles awaited him, technologies beckoned, worlds yearned to be conquered. The quantum motor's triumph was merely the overture. The true Odyssey was about to commence. He seized his jacket, heading for the door, a whirlwind of energy and resolve. A rocket demanded building. A planet ached to be reached. He had to reach Mars and beyond.